is it possible to identify some specific business models in the craft sector? I think we can use the idea of industrial cluster to somehow frame or understand what kind of business models we have in the craft sector. Because if we look at these, and it's not something new, it was theorized by Marshall in 1919, it was really like a socio-economic entity where there were several enterprises all working in the same sector, working in the same area, which would cooperate. So there also talk about competition in these areas. But what is very typical of this cluster is that it was really an ecosystem where all the actors were important. It's companies, it's the government, it's education, it's consumers and buyers. So for me, the interesting aspect that comes, it's not just economic, it's a socio-economic context where you have these local community working together. What makes this idea, I think, applicable to the approach of business models in the craft sector is that we have had through times an analysis of culture districts. And what is also interesting is that if we look at these, it's there's a strong link between the product and the territory, so which is something very specific in craft. There's a quality attention to quality of what has been provided. There's an exchange of knowledge and competencies. So there's this relationship between regional resources, human resources, companies, accessibilities. It is interesting because all these, for instance, in studies about business models in the craft sector can be translated in what would say social capital, human capital, economic capital, cultural capital, symbolic capital. You see all these in this cluster, and this is really what characterizes the work of craft people in the cluster area. I think that if we look at the definition of maker space of Fab Lab, we see again the same kind of concept popping up again. And they are community operated, so the social aspect, the social capital, physical space for people with common interest. But they are places for making, collaborating, learning from each other and sharing. This idea of a common good, of a shared good. It is interesting because here I think it goes very much into the idea that with craft, we don't talk just about the economic aspect. You make things, but that's the meaning, the share of practice, of knowledge that goes with it. And I think that is something which is particularly important. In Japan, the Ministry of Economics and Trade and Development has these maps and has really surveyed the craft in the various areas. So there's a very strong localization, specific production, but this is not only in Japan. If I think about Faenza in Italy, Delft in the Netherlands, Limoges in France, this is very typical in the craft sector in general. And what happens in this area, there's a strong connection among producers. There's the involvement of different actors, education institutions. You often have a sort of high school training people in pottery making in Faenza. So it's the government that should intervene. The companies are important, craft people are important, the public is very important. And this idea of competing but collaborating at the same time is something that really stimulate the development of craft. So you see there are some keywords: sharing, connection with local materials, need to support the sector. Because if we want to talk about business models, we need to talk about a demand for this product. And what I find very interesting from this point of view, to really train the public, is the development of various festivals, if we want, that try to make artisan known and raise awareness among the public about craft. You have a lot of platforms, for instance, that advertise and distribute specific products, like Etsy. I think these are also business models. And this is a very interesting case, is based in Italy. It's a group of people who set this platform, and they really scout craft people, artisans through Italy, and put these people on this platform, on this website. You can visit them, you cannot buy the products. It's mostly about going and visit them and see how they work. So I think it shows very much how important it is also to make the public more aware of the qualities of craft products. Because if people don't think that craft objects are appealing, there's really like a barrier that the best business models would not be able to overcome.